Nimesh Pandya is accompanied by his wife, Mrs. Kamala, and his sister-in-law and their children. Thank you, Mr. Nimesh, for accommodating us and addressing Sai devotees in spite of your busy schedule. Before I proceed any further, let me first welcome Mr. and Mrs. Nimesh Pandya on behalf of Goldstein mentions that Mr. Nimesh Pandya is a distinguished man who has had wonderful experiences with Swami and performed important work in the Sri Satya Sai organization in India over the years. We are fortunate that he is here and able to address us. Mr. Nimesh Pandya is a practicing lawyer at the High Court in Mumbai, India. He is also a trust member of Sri Satya Sai Trust Maharashtra, India, and District President of Mumbai City for Sri Satya Sai Seva Organization. And he is also the faculty member of Sri Satya Sai Education in Human Values Training. He has also directed many value-based dramas staged before Swami, and this includes Janani Janmabhoomi, which we all know here at the Flushing Center, and God's Address. Mr. Nimesh Pandya and his wife, Mrs. Kamala, are in our organization for more than 25 years. They arrange Bal Vikas programs all over India. In one of the interviews, they have asked Swami to bless them with a child. Swami said, "Why one child? May you be the parent of all my children." From that day onwards, both took a lot of interest in Bal Vikas program and toured all the states in India to propagate Swami's ideals in Bal Vikas. They are instruments in bringing out EHV in a beautiful manner so as to make everybody understand it. Mrs. Kamala Pandya is also an advocate assisting him not only in his profession but also giving talks on Bal Vikas. May Lord Sai shower his grace on them to continue their work in the divine mission. May I now request Mr. Nimesh Pandya to please come forward and address us.
Shri Satya Sai Baba. I wish all of you a very, very happy New Year and pray to Bhagavan that he blesses us with that ultimate bliss and joy that all of us deserve, and rightly so. My salutations to the Lord and Master residing in each one of you, and I thank Dr. Goldstein and Brother Sundar for saying his lovely words about Kamla and I. But let me tell you, whatever they have said is only due to the grace of Bhagavan, and nothing else is responsible for that but that. We're indeed very, very thankful for the organization in New Jersey for providing this opportunity to us to be here today. I was telling Kamla that over the last week that we've been here in New York and been traveling to different centers, it's been a great lesson for me to realize that God exists all over, and more so far away from Prasanthi Nilayam. God exists more in New York than in Prasanthi Nilayam is my clear conviction after that I have come here to these three centers that I'm visiting. It's really amazing that on a New Year's Day, I should be here in New York. Because I remember last New Year I was performing Aarti before Bhagwan on this very day, after the morning international choir got over. And when I was leaving India to come to North America this time, Kamla and I both were debating what a letdown. And last year we were for New Year's in Prasanthi Nilayam, and this year for New Year's we'll be in North America, far, far away from Swami. But I must confess that I felt more closer to Swami here in North America than I was in Prasanthi Nilayam last year, right in his immediate presence. And I say so very sincerely because this is what Swami wants us to understand. This is exactly what Swami wants us to understand. Because we are all very fortunate in this yuga to be contemporaries of Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba. It It is not cliche to say this, but the fact remains that for the first time in the history of mankind, an avatar has come on the face of this earth, showing us our true value. Today, brothers and sisters, we are victims of an education, and I say this very, very caustically, very critical, because I hate all my science teachers who told me in school, when I asked them this question, which kingdom do I belong to? And persistently all of them told you and me that we belong to the animal kingdom. So I'm happy that Bhagavan has come on the face of this earth today to prove this wrong, that you and I do not belong to the animal kingdom. Consistently, for the last more than 80 years, Bhagavan addresses us as Divyatma Swarupatullah. Never once have I heard Bhagavan say, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. Never once have I heard Bhagavan say, brothers and sisters. Always. Bangaru, Divyatma Swarupatullah. Consistently. But probably we all miss this point all the time. We never pay attention to the fact as to why does he call us Divyatma Swarupatullah. The reason is not far. Probably we've all become hypocrites. If you are a Hindu, we're not true Hindus. If you are Muslims, we're not true Muslims. If you are Christian, we're not true Christians. Because if we were, we would have understood Swami very clearly. Because if I'm a Hindu, I may go to 1,000 temples. But I never pay attention to one fact that Hinduism told me, that my human birth was the most precious. Hinduism says, Divyatma Swarupatullah, you are an embodiment of the divine. If you are a Muslim, you are always told, Noor-e Khuda ho tum. Quran ne kabhi nahi kaha ki tum gale ho. Noor-e Khuda ho tum. If you are a Christian, it is always told to us that God and you are one. But no Christian, no Hindu, no Muslim wants to bring this fact in account in his day-to-day life. Because if we set that as a goal for ourselves, then only we could have been a true Hindu, true Muslim, or a true Christian. But this is never the goal, that I'm an embodiment of God. This is never our goal. When we get up in the morning and look in the mirror, poor me, bichara me, main chota hu, main kya kar sakta hu. These are the rhetorics that we see in the front when we see the mirror. Or, ego. I am great, I am beautiful, I am absolutely fantastic. These are the things that we see in the mirror in the morning. Never once we get up and stand in the mirror and say, look, I am divine, I am God. Brothers and sisters, the biggest difference that Bhagavan has made to this world is that he has come to tell us not to become his followers. Please understand. Bhagavan doesn't want followers. Bhagavan has come to tell us that he is God and we are God and that we should become like him. Therefore, there is no followership concept in the Satyasai movement. Bhagavan wants us to become like him. You and I are one. This is a statement for which we don't clap when Bhagavan says. We put into practice in day-to-day life is the mandate that Satyasai has given us. If this is our true image, the question is that all of us have homework to do. Because you could be sitting in a bhajan center doing singing bhajans or doing seva for 30 years for probably all your lifetime. But if you don't make this as your goal, when you stand in front to believe that Bhagavan, what Bhagavan says, it's very important not only to believe in what Bhagavan says, but put into practice what Bhagavan says. Because Bhagavan is very, very critical. He can give you a long rope to hang yourself. Bhagavan gives you a very, very long rope to hang yourself. Because he gives you everything. He'll give you an interview, he'll give you rings, he'll give you chains, he'll solve your problems, solve your cancer, get your daughters married, do everything for you. But if at the end of it, if you don't dare to take what he wants to give you, you're in deep trouble. Therefore, it's not a matter of fear, it's a matter of challenge. That all along, all avatars, all saints, all gurus, all masters told you to follow them. But here is the master who says, become like him. That is the difference between Satyasai and the second thing, the very goal of life. Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, all have said consistently one thing, that the purpose of life is to achieve divinity. But we never said this is the goal of our life. Our goal of life is very, very distinct. If you're a Hindu, you're told moksha. If you're a Muslim, you're told Qayamat ke din Khuda ko jawab dena padega. If you're a Christian, you are told God and you are one. This we know, our grandfathers told us, grandmothers told us, our scriptures tell us, but these are all statements that we hear from one ear and put it out in the other. They never become the goal of our life. We never tell our children this, we don't even tell our own selves this. It's very amazing, and Swami quotes this example very often. The biggest amazing thing in the world is the question that the Yaksha put to Yudhishthira. When all the brothers were dead, and the Yaksha tells Yudhishthira, tell me, answer all my questions and I'll put your brothers back to life, otherwise they are finished. And Yudhishthira takes up this challenge. He says, okay, tell me, I'll answer all your questions. And one question was very pertinent. When he says, tell me, Yudhishthira, which is the most amazing thing in the world? And Yudhishthira promptly answers that the most amazing thing in the world is that man sees death every day, but he believes that he will never die. Most amazing thing. We have all the exercise that we do, but we never exercise one exercise. Just for a moment, close your eyes and think you are dead. And see what the difference it makes to the whole world. No mother, no father, no brother, no sister, no money, no bungalow. Nothing makes sense. And God says, this is one trick. Between birth and death, Baba says the first bell has rung. And unlike in a school exam or a college exam, there is no warning bell. When the end comes, nobody knows. But despite this very grave situation, which is far more graver than the forecast of heavy blizzards and snow in New York, it will be far more worse. Still, nobody. You prepare so much for the forecast. Even if the television tells you tomorrow is going to be a blizzard, all your woolens are out, your gates are closed, your schedules are changed. So much preparation only on a television announcement that there's going to be a blizzard. But nobody cares for that one ultimate announcement that, look, you're already on your path. Be ready. This is one thing that Swami is focusing our attention to. And not with a great fear, with a great sense of joy. I believe Satya Sai is the only avatar who has told man, always be happy in spirituality. Don't keep long faces. I hate it when I go to different centers. I see people sitting so glumly. I mean, discipline is so much on their head that joy and bliss are lost. So then please smile. Life with Bhagavan is a great merry-go-round. It's a fantastic time. It's a time to be happy. It's a time to be blissful. It's a time to enjoy peace and happiness. Therefore, please, next time you go to a Satya Sai center, always smile. Never be glum. Don't keep a long face, for heaven's sake. Because spirituality is for them, for those who can enjoy, for those who can become childlike. And that's it. And I'm sure some people are very in agreement. I wish we could become like them and be very, very happy. But spirituality is a matter of joy and bliss. Why? Because Baba has very clearly said that bliss and joy is our very nature. The distinction that we need to make, brothers and sisters, in the Satsai organization after coming to the Divine Lotus Feet of Bhagavan is to understand what He has come to give us. Our problem today is that we are all there asking Bhagavan for what we want. But not one person is here to go and ask Bhagavan, Bhagavan, what do you want from us? Tell me, we'll do it for you. Very few people do this. I want peace, I want joy, I want my daughter married, I want my problem solved, I want my cancer cured, I want my things to happen, I want my job to change. I want. But for once we never ask Bhagavan, Bhagavan, what do you want? But if you ask Bhagavan, what do you want? His answer is so simple. I only want love. And this is the most misunderstood word in the history of the Satya Sai movement, because nobody understands this word love. And Bhagavan says, I'm not saying this, Bhagavan says. The here word love is an important factor for all of us to understand. That this avatar of Satya Sai is not the physical form sitting in Prashanti Nilayam. We have to understand this basic fact. That this is an avatar who is omnipresent and who shows he is omnipresent. He is not sitting only in Prashanti Nilayam. In fact, you're talking about the dramas that I do. I'm very grateful to Bhagavan for giving this opportunity, because before I became a lawyer, I always wanted to be a dramatist. And it was a war between my father and myself which reached an arbitration to Bhagavan. And then Bhagwan arbitrated in a very beautiful way. He satisfied my father by making me a lawyer and satisfied me by allowing me to do dramas before him for the last 25 years consistently every year. Great award that Bhagwan passed saved the family from disaster between father and son, so to say. And I tell you, when Kamala and I were married by Bhagwan, we were very thrilled. And as usual, the greatest thing that happens after marriage is the great honeymoon. And our honeymoon got delayed for a year. And ultimately at the end of the year, because then I was very surprised. After he got me married, it was the morning at 8 o'clock, and at 9:30 he was pushing us out of the ashram. Go home fast. I said, what happened? We just got married. No, go home, do your duty. I said, okay, fine. We left immediately from there. And after we reached the city, we were so involved in work that no honeymoon for 1 year. After 1 year, we went to the most beautiful place in India called Goa for a honeymoon. After honeymoon got over for a week, we came back to Prashant Nilayam. Those were the days when my father and parents were staying in Prashant Nilayam. So the moment we landed, amazing thing. Message came, Swami is calling for interview. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. So both Kamala and I left our bags in charge inside the interview room, and the moment we get interviewed, the anticipation of great bliss and joy, how people anticipate this. Bhagwan is very blissful inside the interview room. So also we thought foolish people. Kamala and I both entered the interview room. The moment I go inside, I see my parents sitting inside, so I'm surprised how my parents are also inside the interview room. And the moment the door closes, kya samachar? And before I could answer, he says, Goa gaya tha. What clothes you wore, what clothes Kamala wore, what I did, what I didn't do, what swimming suits we wore, how we went to the ocean. If it had ended at that, I would have smiled, but after that he came back to my hotel room. He came inside the hotel room, what did I do, how did I do, what I did. Everything started like a film in front of my parents. So I said, Swami, when it reached a point when I could not share it with my parents, I jumped at his feet and said, Swami, please stop now. And he said, Dekha, Swami can come inside your bedroom also. Yes, Swami, I believe you. What followed thereafter was a great message for all of us. Swami not meant for me, meant for the entire mankind. So Swami says this, that those who say they are devoted to me have a great obligation. And he told Kamala and I that be careful of what you wear, what you speak, what you do. Because the world will see you and assess the glory of Satya Sai. For Sai devotees all over the world, it's the great double responsibility. That if we claim that we are devoted to Bhagwan, the physical form of Bhagwan doesn't move from Prashant Nilayam. There are many gurus who travel all over the world. But Bhagwan Sathya Sai Baba does not travel outside Prashant Nilayam, at best to Mumbai, which also he doesn't travel anymore. He doesn't even go to Chennai, he doesn't even go to Hyderabad. This avatar, sitting in one corner of India, he manifests all over the world. He comes to your house, inside your house, outside your house, everywhere he comes. And that's the time when he said, yes, I am inside you, outside you, above you, below you, everywhere. And this is the truth, that only this avatar can give this experience to common people like you and me, whom we call common. Why? Because we believe we are common, but he believes that we are divine. And he sets a goal for us, to believe that we are divine. Brothers and sisters, the point is, let us take the cue from Bhagwan. What does he want us? What we want him to do, he will do, have no doubts. But also necessary is for us to understand what he wants us. And first thing, from tomorrow morning onwards, it is our duty. Or for that matter, right now it's a duty never to say poor me. Because we are not poor. We are absolutely divine. Second, the whole mandate of the Satya Sai organization is that not only should we know that we are divine, but also know that the same divinity exists in all of us. The second requirement of Bhagwan's devotion. The third, the commonality of thought that set this as a goal of life, that God resides inside me and not outside. Bhagwan doesn't want us to create temples of him. Bhagwan doesn't want us to glorify his pictures. Bhagwan doesn't want us to behave in a manner that the next generation will lock him up in a temple. No. In fact, it's Bhagwan's great wish that the next generation should know from your example and my example that if at all God resides, he resides in the heart of man, and in no temple, no gurudwara, no mosque, nowhere does God reside. If we can set this example for the entire mankind, brothers and sisters, then we have paid the debt for the grace that we receive from Bhagwan. Because Bhagwan says that He resides in our heart, not outside. Once I remember my mother wanted to wash his feet in the interview room. And very caustically he told my mother, "Dhungi Swami pair dhulata hai. Sacha Swami man mein karo, man mein karo, man mein karo." This is Swami's mandate to us, brothers and sisters. Whatever you want to do, look at Him deep inside and not outside. Bhagwan wants nothing but love. In fact, it was last July when He said that I've only come to give love and I only want love and I don't want any transaction between you and me. In fact, He went ahead to say that I have nothing to do with the Satya Sai organization. Can you believe this? I have nothing to do with Satya Sai organization. And all of us believe, we have great ego that we work for Satya Sai organization thinking that we are working for Bhagwan. But here is Bhagwan who says, I have nothing to do with the Satya Sai organization. My relationship with you is one-to-one. But I have given you the gift of the Satya Sai organization because with that you can use it as an instrument to strengthen your bond with me. This is the purpose of the Satya Sai organization. To ourselves, are we lost in the Satya Sai organization as if it's the objective? It's not the objective. The Satya Sai organization is not the objective. It is only an instrument. Which instrument has to be used by us for strengthening our bond with Swami. And what is this bond? Why would Swami be inside? In fact, I asked Bhagwan this question once and I didn't get an answer. But the answer came to me from another blind boy. I asked Bhagwan, you're talking of love, Bhagwan, all the time. But how will this love come from inside? This blind boy told me, Jewish guy, very simple. God has given a very simple quotation. What is that quotation? Forget two things. Amazing story. Forget two things. Very simple. Forget all the harm that others do to you and forget all the good that you do to others. Very simple, no? It's very difficult. Impossible in many, many cases. Why blame others? Me, myself, right now I could fail on that test. If I am talking to you right now, at the end of the talk, if nobody tells me that I spoke very well, I'll be in deep trouble. I'll be so worried, so upset. Or for that matter, if Brother Bob Singh comes and tells me, look, Brother Uncle Nimesh, we thought we had great hope from you, but you turned out to be a lousy speaker. I won't spare him till I meet him with Prashanthaniyam next time to put him back again, you know. I'll treat you back till I can be even with him. But that's life story with all of us. We're not able to forget the good that we do to others, nor are we able to forget the harm that others do. But here lies the trick. This is the goal of sadhana, to forget. Because if you cannot forget and carry this luggage with you all the time, what happens, brothers and sisters? Then you miss the beauty of every moment of life. Right now, you want to do something good, you want to enjoy bliss, but you're carrying the burden of the past or the burden of the future, but you're forgetting the beauty of the present. This is where Swami wants us to focus as an object of sadhana. I remember once my father, in his very, very flamboyant moments, asked Bhagwan, Bhagwan, I want moksha. Bhagwan said, okay, but you come. Lawyer, no, after all, lawyers are very funny people. They keep on arguing with God also. So he sat with Swami and Swami asked him, okay, come on, what is your name? He says, so-and-so, Gulab Rai Pandya. What's your age, so-and-so, where do you live, so-and-so, what's your wife's name, so-and-so, how many children, so-and-so, what's their name, so-and-so, who's their lesson, so-and-so, what are they doing, so-and-so, when were you born, so-and-so, what is your father's name? 200-300 questions in a barrage. So everybody wondering why is Swami asking so many questions. At the end of probably the 250th question, Swami said, देखा, इतना याद है, इतना सब याद है तो मोक्ष कैसे मिलेगा? See the problem, brothers and sisters. If you remember so much, how do you get moksha? Your mind is full of thoughts, your mind is full of memory. What we need to do is forget. Forget not in the sense of worldly sense, but forget the sense that don't carry the burdens. Believe that God is the doer and not you. The question is, how do you do this? This happens when you lose connections. Hello, hello. The question is, how do you do this? Why should you forget? check. Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Check, yeah. The question. Okay, the question is, brothers and sisters, that we ultimately
The point that the objective of sadhana is very distinctly, very, very simple. In fact, it goes to Bhagwan's credit that he has solved our problems in many, many ways. It was man who made God so complicated in many, many ways. This also doesn't work. So just tell me. I talk without mic. That's no way. In fact, the most beautiful thing that impressed me about Bhagwan was when he made this statement that everything in life is complicated. God alone is simple. You must have heard this quotation of Bhagwan. So I was wondering, Swami, how can this be possible? He says, this is my mission. I gave you a simple concept of human values and you made it complicated. In fact, he fired me once because talking on human values, we went all over India talking about human values. And in all over America, I understand human values and the EHP program became a big program. The first thing that happened to me after some years of this talking was that Bhagwan called me one day and lambasted me. He said, "Kya baat karta hai? What are you talking about?" I said, "Swami, human values." He says, "This is one subject you should never speak about. There is no way you should speak about human values, because human values is something which you can't speak, you can only experience." But here we were conducting so many courses and so many classes about EHV. Somebody talks about truth, somebody talks about peace, somebody talks about this. He said, "That's the problem. I gave you such a simple concept and you made it complicated. I say love, then you want 50 definitions of love. I say peace, then you want 50 ways of getting peace. Whatever I make simple and give you, man has the ability and the expertise to make it complicated. This is my duty, is to make everything simple back again. Simplicity is God and God is simple. Please do not make God complicated. And this goes for all study circle leaders who conduct study circles. Please don't make it so complicated that the people don't understand what you're saying. Because there's nothing to be explained in spirituality. Spirituality is a game of experience, not of explanation, as Bhagwan says. Let me come very shortly to this because I don't want to make this very, very speechy, because I like to share my experience with you, which are more important. Once, I was sitting after a function in the morning at Ashadi Ekadashi. We were doing this program, I think the Janani Janmabhoomi, we finished that program. And we were sitting for Swami to give darshan and bless the children and go back. So after the program got over, Swami blessed everybody, got up from the chair and went back to the interview room. Now all of you who've been to Prashant Nilayam know that once Swami goes to the interview room after the program, the next is the aarti, he sits in the car and goes home. I had nearly 600 children sitting in the center of the cycle one hall. And one kid next to me started crying. Literally bawling. And for all you know, all those of you who know Prashant Nilayam, if there are children with you and they start crying, then you are a pariah. You get so badly looked upon by all the volunteers. They think you devils incarnate, they pick you up and throw you out there. So when this kid started crying, I also got scared. I said, God, if this kid doesn't stop crying, I'm in deep trouble. Which is the way to make this kid stop crying? So I asked him, why are you crying? No, uncle. I said, why are you crying? Tell me why are you crying? He said, no, uncle, I want vibhuti. I said, no. I said, okay, I'll give a packet of vibhuti. No, I want Swami to come and materialize vibhuti and give me. This is a tall order. I said, Swami is gone, he's never going to come out. And this kid wouldn't stop crying. He insisted on Swami to come and give vibhuti to him. But I said, why? But no, Swami came in my dream and told me to give me vibhuti. That's why I've come to Puttaparthi. I said, very good. I'm in deep trouble. I said, what to do, how to make him cry? I said, okay, keep quiet. Close your eyes and pray. Now that kid literally believed me. Closed his eyes and started praying. I was very happy, not because he was praying, but I was happy because he stopped crying. I said, never mind, 10 minutes, let it go. Once Swami goes, then he can cry as much as he likes and hand him over to the Guru and be done with it. That's it. But this boy toy was quiet, closed his eyes, went straight into meditation, started praying. Lo and behold, after 5 minutes, what I see? After 5 minutes, exactly what I see is, the interview door opens, Swami walks out, and instead of getting into his car, he meanders around the crowd, slowly and steadily, comes right in front where I am sitting, stands in front of me, smiles at me very beautifully, and says, wake him up. So I say, shh, Swami. The kid gets up, opens his eyes, Swami. Swami looks at him smilingly back again. Kya mangta hai? Swami, vibhuti. Vibhuti and Swami give. And then Swami looks at me, you idiot. You didn't believe, but he believed. Brothers and sisters, what happened was a lesson to me. That this Balmika's kid was a true devotee of Bhagwan. What he had done was, he had shut his mind with one pointed focus, one thought in his mind. With one thought in his mind that I want vibhuti, he was focused on Bhagwan, and Bhagwan had to come and respond to his prayer from within. And when this happened, it struck me that spirituality is a great lesson to be learned from children, not from adults. No adult can teach you spirituality. It's only children who can teach you spirituality. And if you want to know what human values are, it is from the children that you learn human values. Love is a concept that Bhagwan speaks about as energy. And energy, as all of you scientists in New York know, energy by sheer definition means that which has capacity to do work. And this is what Bhagwan has come to give faith to us. That energy of love has capacity to do work. Love works. Please put it to work. Don't doubt it. That is the mandate of Bhagwan. In fact, Bhagwan says love is the basis of our life. If I'm standing and talking to you right now, and if I have to, I gesticulate, I look at you, I'm wearing this white shirt and white pant, and I've got this half grey hair and talking to you, and suddenly I fall flat on the floor. And Brother Sundar comes and says, oh God, checks my pulse and says, he's gone, Nimesh, out. What's the difference between me standing and me dead? Same body, same white clothes, same situation. My wife is sitting there, she claims to love me very much. But despite that situation, she'll cry for a little while, she'll feel bad for a little while, but she may not even carry my body back to India because it's very costly to carry the corpse. She may decide that it be cremated somewhere in Jersey or somewhere where is the closest crematorium. But she also will realize one day that this body was not Nimish. In fact, I also very often quote this example of a toy which I used to play when I was small. There was a monkey toy. You know the monkey with the symbols? I don't know how much you play, right? You should always remember your toys in childhood because that's what they learn from, that's where you learn the real thing from. I also had a toy with the monkey, the symbol. Chavi Mara used to play. We were three brothers got 3 toys. And brothers are brothers. One brother didn't want the other brother's toy to work. So when 3 toys were dancing, one brother goes and takes out the battery from the toy which belonged to me, and suddenly my toy goes like this. And when my toy goes like this, test with your kids, all mothers sitting there. If the toy doesn't work, the next thing that the child does, very intelligently, pick that toy and put it in a basket. He never plays with the toy if it doesn't work. I think she agrees with me. I had to learn from the baby itself. That the value of the toy was not in the color, not in the symbol, not in the dance, but it was in the battery. It was the battery which was making the toy wonderful and loving, isn't it? Same way with us, brothers and sisters. As long as this power of love is there between us, as long as the power of love energizes us, we have our value, we have our beauty. And therefore the focus of sadhana is this energy within which Baba calls love. It is this love, when manifests into my ears, into my head, it is truth. When this truth is spoken about, it is truth. When I act in accordance with this truth, it is right conduct. And when I always, continuously have right conduct, peace is my natural consequence. Therefore, the first thing that Swami teaches us, peace is not something which you get from outside. Peace is a consequence of your own unity of thought, word and deed. Very simple.
This was the truth learned by the rishis after thousands of years of sadhana, which this avatar has come to give us in a split second. He says, focus your attention. Devotion to Bhagavan means focus your attention, the fact that Bhagavan is inside you, not outside you. And this Bhagavan speaks to you all the time. He speaks to you in the form of the voice of conscience. It is when this conscience speaks, you think about it, you act about it, and when you act in accordance with your conscience, peace is a natural consequence. Brothers and sisters, it is this avatar who has taught us that if you mortgage your peace and your happiness outside, you will suffer the consequences of a mortgage. If a husband mortgages her happiness to the wife, if the wife mortgages the happiness, his or her happiness to the husband, if the father mortgages his happiness to the children mortgage their happiness to the parents, there is always suffering. Because once you mortgage your happiness, it is not in your control, remember? And you in North America know the value of mortgage more than we in India know about it. Installments, interest, all these concepts are more known to you than to me. Because you mortgage your happiness. But Baba says, don't do this. Because the whole process of sadhana is not to get happiness, not to get peace, but to retain the peace and happiness that God has already given to us. It's not a learning process, it's an unlearning process. It is not how to gain, but how not to lose is the whole process that Baba has come to teach us. And this is a very important dimension. Because peace doesn't come by going to the Alps. Because, I'll tell you a Kamladana example. Once we went to Switzerland, we were there sitting on the Alps, watching the Mount Jungfrau. Beautiful scene, everything fantastic. Kamla and I standing there walking to Jungfrau, thinking, oh, Swami is so great, beautiful, we'll enjoy. And next door there's another couple. We also spent 3 lakhs from India. The couple also must have spent 3 lakhs from India. Both of them spending 3 lakhs from India to get peace in the Alps. I'm standing there watching, enjoying the bliss, and suddenly this couple next door fights. He didn't bring the camera. I told you to bring the camera. He lost the film. So the whole ching bang goes on there. Not only did they not enjoy peace, but our peace also got lost. Because Kamla and I are feeling so bad. I said, look at this couple, he's standing in Jungfrau, watching the Alps, the beautiful snow, and there's no peace. Why? Because peace was not dependent upon the Alps. Peace is a factor within yourself. It could be in the middle of Bronx, in the middle of Soho, that you could be at peace. Because peace is a natural consequence of righteousness. Righteousness is the manifestation of truth, and truth is the manifestation of love, and that love is the voice of conscience, the voice of Swami inside you. I always give this example, and I know some of my friends who heard this are also already smiling about it. It's a great example of potatoes. Imagine my wife Kamla and I both are lawyers, so both supposed to be partners in life and everything. And one morning, the kitchen is her forte, so she tells me, look darling, go and get 1 kilo potatoes in the evening. I said, yes, no problem, I'll get for you. The day passes by, and as I come home in the evening, I suddenly strikes me as the car enters the compound, oh God, I forgot potatoes. And woe be on a husband who forgets to carry the wife's errand. You know what happens? So there is tension in my system. Oh God, I've forgotten. Now what will she say? She'll scream. She'll tell me I'm a bad husband. She'll tell me you don't care for me. All these thoughts are in my mind, and I'm so upset and so unhappy. I'm trying to look for excuses. The potatoes were bad. There was no market. The shop was closed. What do I tell my wife that why I forgot this potato? I'm thoroughly upset in my system. And as I reach the door, I'm still very upset, and my food is going to go today. Whole night will go trying to pacify her. You know, it's a very odd situation. And the door opens. As the door opens, she looks at me, smiles at me, hi, good evening, Sairam. And she's forgotten to ask me whether I brought the potatoes or not. But I'm thoroughly upset. And since I'm a dramatist, scene 2, changeover. Scene 2, changeover, I have brought the potatoes in my hand. I've remembered to bring. And as I bring the potatoes in my hand, the car enters the compound, I'm already dreaming. Oh wow, as I go home, she'll say, oh, what a lovely husband you are. Let me cook some potato fries for you. Let me put some real good chili sauce in it and give you properly and all that. I'm dreaming, and the whole thing is joy and bliss and peace in my mind. I'm thinking of all the best things. As the potato goes up and I knock the door opens, and again she's forgotten to even ask me whether I brought the potatoes or not. Brothers and sisters, the homework is very simple. The happiness which I enjoyed, or the lack of peace that I enjoyed, had nothing to do with my wife and had nothing to do with the potatoes. It had only to do with my keeping my own word from my conscience. Check out at every moment in life that wherever you are not at peace, it is not because of somebody else. We have this habit of blaming other people for the lack of peace in our life. The husband blames the wife blames the husband, the children blame the parents, but it is not true. Because sadhana means, Baba says, is to retain the peace that God has already given to us. If you lose what God has given to you, nobody can help you in the face of this earth. Your best friend cannot, your wife cannot, your children cannot, your property cannot, nobody can help you. Only God can help you, and that is God inside you. You make friends with God inside you, your friendship is strong. If you don't make friends with God inside you, you can go to the Venkateshwara temple 1,000 years. No Venkateshwara statue will help you, I promise you that. Because God resides inside us and not outside. Before I come to the next story of God in a statue, let me come to the next story. Imagine my brother comes to me and says, brother, I need $500 today. I desperately need $500. My wife is not well, Bhavi is not well. Please, I want to take her to the doctor. So my natural reaction, conscious, is God inside me says, okay, take. But as I am taking out $500 from my purse and I am about to give, my wife tells me, Aji, sunte ho kya? Don't give it, inform the habit, what are you doing? You should help him. All the philosophy of life will come from my wife. Why I should not give the $500 to him? Two scenes in this drama also. Scene 1. Despite my wife screaming from behind, I give the $500. What happens? That night, I will sleep peacefully. My wife will bubble, boil everything the whole night, but I will sleep peacefully. But imagine if I listen to my wife and not give it. What will happen? My wife will sleep peacefully and I will be tossing in the bed the whole night. I should have given it, I should have given it, I should have given it. Again, the wife is not responsible for my happiness or my joy. Her words were not responsible for my happiness or my joy. What was important was, did I listen to my conscience and put it into practice? This is where Satya Sai's speciality comes. This avatar wants us to focus here. This avatar wants us to focus on this sadhana. Imagine coming for bhajans and doing seva and not doing this. What a waste. Because bhajan is not the goal. Seva is not the goal. It's only the instrumentation by which at the end of the day, before you sleep, you have to answer yourself this question. Have I conquered my mind or not? Because the manifestation of this love is blocked only by the mind. And the mind is the focus of our sadhana. Baba says, conquer your mind. Become a swarat, not a samrat. We are trying to improve everybody else, but we are not focusing on improving ourselves. We are trying to conquer everybody else, but we are not conquering our own mind, which is not correct, brothers and sisters. In spirituality, in the world of Sai, we need to conquer our mind first. And this is important because the 5 senses and the thought are important. Baba so beautifully says, sow a seed of thought, reap a fruit of action. Sow a seed of action, reap a fruit of habit. And sow a seed of habit, reap a fruit of character. And sow a seed of character, reap a fruit of good fortune. For everything that happens in our life, the first thought is important. The sadhana is what thought to keep in the mind and what not to keep in the mind is the focus of sadhana. Imagine I'm talking to you right now, and suddenly a thought comes, Haagen-Dazs. No, what? That's how you pronounce ice cream? Haagen-Dazs. I'm talking to you, and the thought is, this fragrance of Haagen-Dazs ice cream comes in my mouth. And the Haagen-Dazs goes. Baba says one thought, and a series of thoughts makes a desire. Therefore, Haagen-Dazs sticks in my mind. Haagen-Dazs, 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 Haagen-Dazs. Series of thoughts of Haagen-Dazs, desire. Moment the desire comes and forms, next is action. So I stop talking, I tell brother Satya Kumar, Haagen-Dazs, he brings drums, Haagen-Dazs, eat, Haagen-Dazs. You see the whole sequence? Now one thought can do this, there are thousands of thoughts in our mind. The trick of sadhana lies, which thought to keep and which thought not to keep. And thoughts can be dangerous. It was just a story of Shirdi Sai Baba, when one devotee of his was pressing his feet. As he was pressing his feet very gently and nicely, he was in bliss. Till such time as outside the Dwarka Mai, one beautiful lady passed by. And as the beautiful lady passed by, this man's eyes saw the lady, and then suddenly he was pressing his feet, he got very upset. So he was so guilty for seeing that woman and trying to think about it, he started pressing Swami's feet harder. Swami, what are you doing? No, Deva, no. He said, don't worry. The eyes saw, and the eye's duty is to see. But after the eyes saw, what was important for you was to decide whether to keep the thought in your mind or not. You can't, just because the eyes saw a beautiful woman, you can't go slap the eye like that. Or just because you hear something, you can't go slap the ear like that. The ears will hear, the eyes will see, the nose will smell. What lies for man to do is that after these thoughts come into your mind, it is here that our process starts of what thought to keep and what not thought to keep. Very important. Even here also lies even the entire factor of discipline in the Satya Sai organization. Once I challenged, why should you say Suprabhatam at 5:10 in the morning? Has anybody found out? Has anybody asked this question? Why should you say Suprabhatam at 5:10 in the morning? Why can't you say 12 o'clock in the afternoon? I have heard a lot of answers to this. A lot of theories, a lot of books have been quoted, a lot of things have been told. Brahma Muhurat, good vibration, this, that. I said, what do you mean? 5:10 in New York is like middle of the night in India. So where's the sanctity of the 5:10 situation? You know? So then I realized that is not that. It's not the question of 5:10 Suprabhat. But what happens to me at 5:10 is important. Because at 5:10 when I get up, there are two things happening to me. My mind is telling me, Nimish, go back to sleep. The conscience is telling me, get up. This war between the mind and the conscience, who wins is the issue of discipline. Therefore I tell my mind, nothing doing. Get up at 5:10, sit. Because then I know I have conquered my mind. Otherwise my mind will tell me, go and sleep. I'll sleep. And if mind forms the habit of commanding me, then I'm a miserable man. All of us know that. If you follow the dictates of the mind, which follows the dictates of the five senses, you're in deep trouble. And therefore Swami encourages us that disciplines and rules are meant not for debating and putting Brother Bob or Brother Satyakumar down. He's a crazy guy, so much disciplines, why is he doing that? Why this rule? If you follow this rule, I will stop coming to your center, I'll go and form another center. You know, I mean, just because, but we missed the point. We missed the point that discipline, it doesn't make a difference whether you sing a bhajan for 2 minutes or you sing a bhajan for 3 minutes. Or if somebody tells you sit in the bhajan for sing only this bhajan. No, I will sing my own created bhajan. I will not sing your bhajan. You missed the point. The point is not that. The point is that if you're told to do something, please do it, because your mind will tell you not to do it. But the conscience will tell you do it. And this war between the conscience and the mind is to be won by us. And that is the focus. In fact, bhajan singing is a very dangerous situation. In Bombay, I conducted an experiment. And there was too much of trouble with the bhajan singers in front. I decided to put all of them behind. I said, let all the devotees sit in front, let the bhajan singers sit behind. Because when nobody saw who was singing, there was no trouble, you see. The whole thing is mind. And Swami wants us to do this sadhana. And therefore he says, listen to my voice within yourself. And when you do this, the whole situation comes into a straightforward situation, brother and sister. But the point is that we miss this out. We need to focus on this situation very, very strongly. It's very important. In fact, the biggest thing that came to me was when Baba was introduced. It's true. Really, Kamlan, I didn't ask Swami for any children. But Bhagwan knew that I didn't have children, and we never really bothered actually speaking. But one day Bhagwan at Dharmakshetra caught hold of me. We were doing a program, there were like 4,000 children on the top of Dharmakshetra lawn. They were all sitting, we just finished the program. And then Bhagwan came to me and says, Kitna son? So I looked at him like that. I said, Swami, you know I don't have children. No. How many children? I said, Swami, you know I don't have children. No, tell, how many children? It went on and on and on. I said, Swami, I know I don't have children. He put me to a climax of a situation. And then he suddenly looked around to all those people. Kyun? Ye sab bachcha tumhara nahi hai? I said, haan, Swami. I understood that there is something funny, and I said, yes, Swami, all am I. In the evening, came down for darshan at the Dharmakshetra main hall. And before opening the curtain to go out for darshan, behind the curtain, he again queried me, Kitna children? I said, Swami, 5,000. Then tumhara kitna? I said, Swami, 5,000. Then he bolo, tumhara kitna? 5,000. See how grateful. Like a little kid, you repeat. He makes you repeat a lesson again and again and again and again, teaching you that situation. I realized why he asked me this question. Then it dawned upon me that Kamlan I met through Bal Vikas. It is Bal Vikas which is the core message of Bhagwan Shri Sathya Sai Baba. In fact, I made a rule in Bombay City now. Every active worker, I've told them to sit for a Bal Vikas class for 1 hour and 15 minutes, at least once in a month. And I do recommend that you also should do it. All adults should do it. You sit. I sit in my wife's Bal Vikas class, not because she's my wife, but because she's a Bal Vikas guru. And I tell you, those are the most blissful moments of my life when I sit for a Bal Vikas class. Because that is the class for 1 hour and 15 minutes where real core essence of sadhana comes out. Because the Bal Vikas guru, full of love, total devotion to the children, not qualified. Only qualification is that she can love. And that qualification, she sits with 10 children, 15 children. And what does she do with the children for 1 hour and 15 minutes? Puts them to the grind of the 5 teaching techniques. Silent sitting, prayer, group singing, storytelling, and group activities. 5 things, techniques that a teacher takes, uses all together judiciously on the child for 1 hour and 15 minutes in 1 week, spread over 9 years. And what happened, brothers and sisters? Out comes a child at the end of 9 years with the strongest and the loudest voice of his conscience. Nothing, it does nothing else. No use of teaching Vedas and Shlokas and Stotras if ultimately at the end of 9 years, the child's voice of conscience doesn't become strong. But the child forms the habit of listening to the conscience, thinking about it, and putting into action and experiencing peace. Because once this sequence is understood by him, then perfect character amongst the children. In fact, you should experiment this all over America also, the children. It's very difficult in America to tell the children, don't see the television. Isn't it how difficult it is? I tell you, I've seen fathers sitting with machines, click, 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 going on with the games and the video games that are going on. And nobody can control themselves because they're so good. They're fantastic. But the question is, how do we tell them to stop? I've seen mothers and fathers shouting, stop it, not now, do this, punishment, everything happening. But I do believe that the safer route is to make the child so strong in the voice of conscience that the child himself decides, I don't want to see this. In fact, my brother Jumsai in Thailand, who conducts this experiment in the school, for many of you who have been to Thailand can see this school. In that school, he has no discipline. So when Kamala and I were there, in fact she was there for both hands and I was there, we realized that there is no discipline in this school. So we wondered why. And out came the response. He says, no, I'm experimenting to see whether pure love works or not. And it does work, brothers and sisters. In that school, children are children. They will do their mistake. But there will be a time when he's patient enough to see that the child decides for himself, no, enough is enough, I'll go and study my way. And this is the greatest gift that we can give to our children. This is called the gift of intuition, not the gift of intellect. In fact, the Swami Vivekananda once said, that if you had a chance to study again, what would you study again? And Swami says, I will not study history, geography, science or mathematics, but I will study that art by knowing which all knowledge is mine whenever I want it. And all of us know that what Swamiji meant was, he was the strongest practitioner of meditation. And that meditation increased the voice of his conscience so much that knowledge comes from within. Newton didn't become great in a laboratory. Archimedes didn't become great in a laboratory. Newton became great when his mind was empty, totally empty. No thoughts in the mind. Down comes the apple and out comes the law of gravitation. Archimedes, stark naked, enjoying his bath, no thoughts. The body floats and from inside comes the answer, the law of buoyancy. Many things can be achieved in a laboratory, but far greater things are achieved by intuition than intellect because the voice of God gives you the complete knowledge that wants inside. Therefore, let's change our basic concepts. Let us learn to retain peace and happiness, not gain peace and happiness. Let us understand that the entire concept of God has been simplified by Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. God is not in a statue, God is not in a mandir, God is not above, God is not below. God is everywhere, inside us, outside us, above us, below us, everywhere. And God can play miracles. If we change the vision of seeing God in everybody else, life can change, relationships can change, everything can change if we make it the object of our life that I want to see God in other people. I want to see God in myself, and then I want to see God in everybody else. If we do this, then we are true devotees of Bhagwan. In fact, all of us need to pass a test, and that is the test of devotion. The only true definition of devotion that I have heard from Bhagwan till today is in the letter which he wrote to his brother. If most of you have read it, you will remember it. Where he says the true test of devotion for me means that you are always at peace, both in joy and in sorrow. Let us not fool ourselves by saying that if you come to the bhajan center of Sathya Sai Baba, you will not have sorrow. Because Baba himself has said that sorrow, that happiness is only an interval between two sorrows. And Bhagwan will not cure your problems. What Bhagwan can do is to give you the strength to bear your problems. Many people say that Bhagwan cures. Bhagwan doesn't cure your karmas. Bhagwan cures the impact of your karmas by doing what? By strengthening your mind and not letting you feel. That is called anugrah, as he calls it. I remember my wife was not well and I take her permission to quote this example. For 25 years she was suffering. But 25 years none of us realized that she was suffering. It was only a matter between herself and Sai. At the end of 25 years, when the surgery had to happen, the doctor got surprised because the magnitude of the problem that the doctor saw inside her was amazing for the doctor to believe that this woman was working for 25 years without any discomfort. When the surgery got over, when we went back to Swami, Swami says, "Kya bola doctor?" What he was trying to hint was, brothers and sisters, that look, I knew the problem was there. I cannot cure the problem, but with my anugrah, you won't even realize that the problem existed there. With his own physical form today, we're all worried, why does he do like this? But the fact, brothers and sisters, is that here is a master who teaches by example. He's showing to us that despite the discomfiture in the physical form, his work never stops. He goes about its routine correctly, giving love and love and love, because the objective of his life is to give love. When mind takes over the pain and says it doesn't pain, he tells the mind, don't feel the pain, and the mind will not feel the pain, is the example that Swami is giving us from his own physical form. I tell you, please don't be deluded. I understand North America, there were many issues when Swami fell in. But I tell you my personal example, I have seen Bhagwan sitting on the portico on last October, the children's festival with 7,000 children there, and Bhagwan was having apparently even difficulty to raise his hand up to his mouth to remove his hair from the forehead. All felt very bad. But lo and behold, to my surprise, the moment he liked two kids performing very much, he called the kids on the platform, and instead of doing like this, he raised his hand like that and gave a whole chain to that kid. Now what happened? He could do this, no? And if he can do this, why can't he do like this? Why should he do like this? But the point is, he's telling us that yes, true sadhana lies in conquering the mind. Thy mind, conquer the mind. The only diamond that Bhagwan wants us to appreciate is thy mind. Therefore, brothers and sisters, the mandate is that if you want devotion to Bhagwan, please understand that what we need is peace. What we need is to retain the happiness. Please don't go looking for things outside. Because if you look for things outside, there is only misery. If I am looking for acknowledgement from Brother Sundar here that I sang very well, he may choose to tell me, he may choose not to tell me, and I am mortgaged and finished. But if I am happy doing my work, whether Sundar talks or doesn't talk, makes no difference to me in the world. This is the focus that we need to understand. And ultimately, the manifestation of the true devotee of Bhagwan can only be in this bhajan that I love very much, and I believe that this bhajan should be a reflection of every personality of a Sai devotee. I'd like you to sing with me before I end on this subject and leave you to ponder over these thoughts, because if you don't focus on sadhana, it's going to be very, very difficult. Therefore, please understand that the Satsai organization's 5 teaching techniques, with the Bal Vikas children do, we make the mistake. A bhajan singer says, I will not do seva. A seva man says, I will not do Bal Vikas. A Bal Vikas man says, I will not do bhajan. But these are different wings. But all of us need to do all the 5 teaching techniques. Because if the children can benefit from the 5 teaching techniques, I think we can also benefit. Once it was asked to Bhagwan, what would a Sai devotee look like? If I had to meet a Sai devotee on the road, what would he look like? The answer lies in this bhajan. नैनों में प्रेम धार, वचनों में अमृत धार. 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 साई मेरा जीवन साथा, साई मेरा जीवन साथा. साई मेरा जीवन साथा, साई मेरा जीवन साथा. नैनों में प्रेम धार, वचनों में अमृत धार. नैनों में प्रेम धार, वचनों में अमृत धार.
साई मेरा जीवन आधार, सद्गुरु साई मेरा जीवन आधार, जीवन का आधार मेरा जीवन का 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 आधार, सद्गुरु साई 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 मेरा जीवन का आधार, नैनों में प्रेम धार, नैनों में प्रेम धार, नैनों में साई मेरा जीवन आधार, सद्गुरु साई मेरा जीवन आधार, जीवन का आधार मेरा जीवन का आधार, जीवन का आधार मेरा जीवन का आधार, सद्गुरु साई 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 मेरा जीवन का आधार, नैनों में प्रेम धार, वचनों में अमृत धार, सद्गुरु साई मेरा जीवन का आधार. When can this happen? When constantly on the streets of New Jersey or New York, when you walk, all 300, 400, 500 of us here today, when you walk, when people look at you, you only see love in your eyes. When you open your mouth, people only hear sweetness from your mouth. And this can happen only when Jivan Kadhar, the basis of your life, is Sadguru Sai. But not the Sadguru Sai who lives in Prashant Nilayam alone. That Sadguru Sai who resides in our heart and not outside. This is the basis, and if this is followed, then what happens is what happened to me in the first interview. I had thousands of friends, literally. I was very flamboyant in St. Xavier's College at Mumbai City, and that was the contemporary times of many, many famous film stars, including Pankaj Udhas and Farooq Sheikh, and all were my colleagues that time, because I was desperate to become a star, as many kids are. So when I reached Prashant Nilayam for the first time, Bhagwan called me for the interview. He says, "Kitna friends, Bapri," like this one. "Kitna friends." Too many friends. Bad. As long as you got money in your pocket, friends. No money, no friends. Fact. You realize, because to maintain friendship, you have to give a party, and every time they give you a party, you have to give a party back. And if you don't, then you're out of the circuit, you see. Try maintaining friendship by going to a friend's house, only having dinner at his house. See how long you go. You can't go for too long, okay. One day he'll say, "Okay, I'm not at home today, keep it back." Then he said, only one friend, and he's God, and he's inside you. You see, when I heard this, people want to hear only what they want to hear. They don't want to hear everything. So when he said only one friend, that is God, he pointed at him. So till that time, my memory got stuck. But the next line I forgot, that he's inside you. Okay, that fact was forgotten. So I became friends with Bhagwan, and it was a beautiful moment. Bhagwan talking to you every time you go to Puttaparthi, and Bhagwan patting you and telling you, and everything that's happening. Great friendship. And one day what happened after a few years was Bhagwan stopped talking to me. And when he stopped talking to me, it was pain. Didn't talk to me for 7, 8 years, he did not speak to me. Because I had made 2 mistakes. One was that I went with somebody to Rameshwaram to see the mandir at Rameshwaram down south of India. Moment I left Prashant Nilayam, he caught my father. "Son, kidhar gaya?" So my father thought he's done a good job. I tell him, "Swami, son's gone to Rameshwaram, sir." He thought he was doing a very good job, but he did not know that he had doomed me for the rest of my life. Immediately Swami turned his eyes. "Udhar kya hai jo idhar nahi hai? What is there that is not here? Why did he go to Rameshwaram and I am here?" He didn't speak to me for 7, 8, 9 years. Till after 9 years, I got a person. I used to speak to him for organizational matters, but personal matters, ignore, complete. On the 9th year, probably when I got the interview again, the interview opened, moment the door closed. "Kyun? Gaya tha na Rameshwaram?" After 9 years. You see? Tall order. Then I realized the 3 levels of friendship that I went through, brothers and sisters. The first level of friendship was with the world. The second level of friendship was with the physical form of Bhagwan.
And the third level of friendship was when Bhagwan taught us that even the physical form is not your friend. The physical form is only a great symbol, a great opportunity for all of us to get energized, to go there, have darshan, but to carry him back in our hearts. Because the ultimate final resting place for friendship lies with Bhagwan inside us and not outside us, brothers and sisters. God is very simple. Let us not make it complicated. Let us learn to forget, because love is something that we are bound to do. And love works. It's only that we should have the confidence that love works. With these few words, all I can do is I'm very, very grateful to each one of you for spending these beautiful moments with me on a New Year's Day. Should not have, you could not have, the option was yours, but having exercised the option, be patient with me. I'm deeply grateful to you and deeply grateful to Bhagwan for this great opportunity to meet you lovely people, because I tell you, I believe it. Being devoted to Bhagwan in India is very easy. But maintaining your devotion far away, thousands of miles here, is a great opportunity. And I do reiterate that Bhagwan lives more in New York with you than in Prasanthi Nilayam. It's my firm conviction. Thank you, and thank you very, very much.
If anybody has any questions, they could ask them. Nobody? Okay. Let's go for Mangalarti. I request Mr. Nimesh Pandya and his wife, Kamla Aunty, to please perform Mangalarti.